For the National Bar Association in 2020, it is an honor, a delight for me to serve as your president and to welcome you to this event. We are so excited to be in Region 12. And I'm going to now turn over the program to the director, Region 12 Director, Joshua Turner, who's then going to lead us through all the stages of this program this evening.
All right, thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Before we get started with everything going on, as Madam President has so noted, we think it appropriate to start off with prayer. So Dwight Flinch, if you could lead us in prayer, I would really appreciate it.
Absolutely, let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all the blessings you have given us. We thank you for life. We thank you for strength. We thank you for your promises. We ask that in this pivotal time, you will infuse us with the strength that you have given so consistently over the years, that you'll infuse us with the power that you gave those who have come before us, those who have led the fight for change. We ask that you help us to be very mindful and careful in these times. We ask that you help us to be kind to ourselves and to each other. And we ask that you give us the wisdom and the insight that can help us make the most of our efforts and make the most of this forums like these. And on that note, we ask that you bless the program here this evening. We ask that our speakers, our panelists, our leaders will be filled with a clear vision. We ask that the communication may be precise. We ask that we'll feel encouraged and focused and ready to do this great work that you have given us. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Turner, and I'm the Region 12 Director for the National Bar Association, and welcome to President C.K. Hoffler's first town hall meeting here in Region 12. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to be here tonight, especially the panelists and the leaders of the National Bar Association at the forefront of meaningful change, as this event would not have as great of an impact without you. Tonight, we'll be talking about what Madam President C.K. Hoffler categorizes as the three pandemics of our time. We have election protection, COVID-19 and its effects on the election, and a very timely discussion about police brutality. Make no mistake, tonight is not a philosophical discussion. It is a call to action, and every Region 12 member should leave the discussion tonight with very clear action items. And with that, I will introduce our three highly distinguished panelists who need no introduction. National Bar Association President C.K. Hoffler is a seasoned trial lawyer and the CEO of the C.K. Hoffler firm, and a trilingual firm based in Atlanta, Georgia. As a graduate of Smith College and the Georgetown University Law Center, she specializes in a number of practice areas such as commercial litigation, opioid litigation, catastrophic injury, civil rights, and global commercial transactions, just to name a few. Madam President is licensed in Georgia, Florida, Virginia, DC, and Pennsylvania. To date, Ms. Hoffler has tried and or settled cases totaling over $800 million. An accomplished attorney, Madam President was previously a partner at Edmund, Lindsay, and Hoffler LLP, and a partner at the Willie Gary firm in Florida, where she ran the commercial and international litigation practice for 13 years. She has also counseled to civil rights icon, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and has represented him in the Rainbow Push and Wall Street project for the past 30 years. Ms. Hoffler also lectures extensively on trial and best practices strategies to legal professionals and young lawyers across the nation. On July 29th, 2020, Ms. Hoffler was sworn in as the president of the National Bar Association. She holds a number of honors and awards for her achievements in law and is very active in her community. Next, we'll go to Karen Evans, our second panelist. Earning her Bachelor of Science in Nursing from East Carolina University, Karen Evans is a former registered nurse and captain in the United States Air Force Nurse Corps. She is an advocate for healthcare equity and equality and a trial attorney and partner in the Cochran Firm's Washington, D.C. office here in Region 12. A graduate of the University of North Carolina School of Law, Ms. Evans combines her years of experience as a registered nurse and a former defense lawyer with aggressive advocacy skills to pursue claims on behalf of individuals and families who have suffered life-changing catastrophic injuries and losses. She has successfully tried and settled numerous medical malpractice cases in the 7- and 8-figure range. In 2019, she was elected to the Cochran Firm PC National Board of Directors. Also in 2019, as well as in 2020, Ms. Evans was listed by Law Dragon 500 as a leading plaintiff consumer lawyer, along with numerous other accolades. Ms. Evans was a 2018 recipient of the National Bar Association Presidential Award for exemplary service to the association and has been very active throughout the region, serving as the president of the Washington Bar Association and Washington Bar Association Education Foundation. Pertinent to today's discussion, she is currently serving as the co-chair of the National Bar Association's Covet Task Force. Finally, we have Ms. Barbara Arnwine. Barbara R. Arnwine is the president and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition and is internationally renowned for contributions on critical justice issues, including the passage of the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1991 and the 2006 reauthorization of Voting Rights Act provisions. Currently, she also serves as co-chair and facilitator of the National Commission for Voter Justice, the Millennial Votes Matters convenings, and the the Voting Rights Alliance. She was the head of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law from February 1989 until June 2015 and holds the honorific title of President Emeritus. She also served as the Charles Hamilton Chair for my alma mater, the North Carolina Central University School of Law, from 2016 to 2017, and also has taught at Columbia University School of Law. She also created the legendary Voting Rights Map of Shame in 2011, which exposed the new modern wave of voter suppression in the states. A graduate of Scripps College and Duke University School of Law, she continues to champion civil rights and racial justice issues nationally and internationally in the areas of housing and lending, women's rights, especially issues affecting intersectionality and African-American women and girls, community development, employment education, environmental justice, and pertinent to today's discussion, policing, restructuring, and voting. And with that, I'll turn it over to the president of the National Bar Association, C.K. Hoffler.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that magnificent introduction. Region 12 is close to my heart because I went to law school in DC. I started my practice in DC, and I really cut my teeth as a baby lawyer in DC. And from the richness of the legacy of the National Bar members, when we thought about the first region to host our town hall meeting, we really wanted to be in the siege of power. We wanted to host this on the eve of the March on Washington. And so it was only fitting that we asked, and I don't want to say we begged, but we did ask Region 12 to host us. And so thank you so much. Thank you for the warm introductions. And I want to get right down to business. But the first order of business is to introduce to you all, and you all know these people, but I just thought it'd be great to introduce one time again, our leadership at the National Bar Association. You all know we've got President-elect Carlos Moore, Lamont Bailey, our Vice President Dominique Calhoun, Vice President Henry Floyd, Vice President Lonita Baker, our Treasurer Nicholas Austin, our Secretary Ashley Upkins, our Member at Large, the Honorable Priscilla Hall, Member at Large Chanel Autry, our member at large, Anne-Marie Clark, our member at large, Kayla Crane, our member, also I wanted to introduce to you all, the interim executive director, Maurice Foster. Many of you know Maurice because he's been involved in the NBA for many, many years, but he was a deputy executive director previously, and he is now our interim executive director. I wanted to also introduce to you all our general counsel, David Green, and also our chief of communications, Elise Bailey, who you probably have seen some of her communications in Twitter and some of the messages. She does a phenomenal job. And finally, I know that she's not on this list, but I did want to introduce as well Akua, my chief of staff, Akua Kapuk. She's not on this list, but you all hear from her, you see her a lot. Dean Tamara Lawson, I see that her picture is under Emily Clark. I apologize for that. And also member at large, Sekou Gary. So this is our leadership team. These are the people who have been honored, who have been blessed to have been elected by you all, or in the case of our interim executive director, by the executive committee. And we are leading the charge for the NBA. We thought it critical to have these town hall meetings so that our membership could know what we are doing in the different regions, at the affiliate level, and just as an organization, because we're operating in COVID. So times are very, very different. So I'm gonna go with a very brief PowerPoint presentation before we get into the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the seminar of this wonderful webinar. So if we could start with the first slide. So what we know is that we are operating, as we know, amidst 3 pandemics: election suppression, COVID-19, and police brutality. When we saw, unfortunately, yet again, the shooting, not 1, but 7 times, of a young man in front of his 3 boys, we just, it's almost something that's unbelievable, but it reinforced the need for the National Bar Association lawyers to step up and take our rightful place and our call to action to help our communities and our membership. Let's go to the next slide. So we talked about the 3 pandemics. Could we have the next slide, please? Or I can just talk, without the slides. Kyle? Okay, so we talked about the 3 pandemics and the state of affairs in the United States. Let's go to the next slide. So what are we doing on the NBA level? Well, COVID-19. COVID has a choke hold on us. We know that in this country. Our communities are disproportionately impacted, but what is the NBA doing? Next slide, please. So the NBA has, in terms of its leadership, let's go to the leadership slide, slide number 5, please. For COVID-19, Marlon Primes is chairing the COVID-19 committee, along with Karen Evans and Laverne Larkey. You're going to hear from Karen Evans tonight, and you will hear about some of the initiatives and some of the things that we are looking at and what the NBA is positioning to do in terms of COVID-19. We had a task force last year that did a great job in setting the tone and doing some research and moving to action. But this year, we're going to be all action because COVID is killing our community at rapid rates and infecting our community. So we have to, as lawyers, and when I say our community, I also mean our membership. So we had to move into action. Next slide, please. We talk about police brutality. This is a picture of George Floyd. This is why we need policing reforms. Breonna Taylor is why we need policing reforms. Ahmaud Rashad Brooks, so many people, Jacob Blake, so many people who are being killed or paralyzed because of police brutality, excessive use of force, police misconduct. Next slide, please. So we know the NBA has taken a position to support the efforts of the Congressional Black Caucus. So if we look at the state of affairs, you all probably know that in June of 2020, led by the Congressional Black Caucus, the House passed a bipartisan bill called the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. This act is bold, it's unprecedented. It has reforms that will transform the culture of policing by curbing police brutality, ethnic profiling, racial profiling, increasing transparency and accountability. Next slide, please. But let me be more specific about what the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act will do. And many of you may know this, but this is just a recap to set the stage of why the NBA and how the NBA has to move to action and what we all must do collectively as a community. So this Justice and Policing Act puts a ban on chokeholds, stops the no-knock warrants. So the chokeholds, we've seen so many people die as a result of the chokeholds. No-knock warrants, well, that's Breonna Taylor. It ends qualified immunity, that doctrine that is a barrier to holding police officers who engage in misconduct and in excessive use of force. That qualified immunity doctrine prevents or makes it difficult to hold them accountable. So within that, it combats, of course, racial profiling, mandates for data collection, including body cameras and dashboard cameras. Where would we be, ladies and gentlemen, of the NBA, if we didn't have those dash cameras? Where would we be in this litigation? And it establishes new standards of policing. This is a critical bill that we must be advocates of, we must support. We have taken a position to support at the NBA with the Congressional Black Caucus. We always have had a strong alliance with the Congressional Black Caucus, but now we're taking it to the next level. They have asked us to provide experts on many, many issues. We've outlined to them, to the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, the 3 areas of focus this year. And they've said, we want to work hand in hand with the NBA, as we always do, but take it to the next level. One of the initiatives is for us to provide experts on policing reform. When they have a need for people to testify, we know we've seen some of our members testify. We've seen past President Darrell Parks, past President Ben Crump. We're now also inviting retired police chief Clarence Williams. Who is Clarence Williams? He was the police chief of Riviera Beach. He's a member of the NBA. He's a retired lawyer and a retired police chief who has written about the need for policing reform consistent with what the Congressional Black Caucus has mandated in this act. Next slide. And the reason why that's important, is because the world needs to see our leadership, our members, our experts on the front lines testifying about these issues, and the Congressional Black Caucus has specifically asked for that, as well as other immediate issues of collaboration. Let's talk about some of our great members. We know this, we see them every day on the news. Chris Stewart, Ben Crump, Darrell Parks, Lee Merritt, Lonita Baker, and so many more. We are seeing them on television, fighting the fight, much as I've said before, to the detriment of their families at times, to their own personal danger. We, as an organization, must support our members and the hundreds of others who are in the field, who aren't on TV, who are fighting these civil rights cases against police brutality. So the NBA is that reservoir of support for our membership. How does that come into play? Well, it comes into play not just in being cheerleaders for them, but when they need us to do things such as push that policing bill, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, we must call the Senate, the senators, to try to push that bill, to put pressure, to lobby. And it happens with us making the calls. The power of picking up the phone and making a call to the Senate offices is very significant, and we should not take it lightly. Being there and being supportive of them and in our communities, preaching and talking about the need for police reform. That's how we support our members. That's how we support the Congressional Black Caucus. Next slide, please. The NBA is making a difference. We're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk. Next slide, please. So when we talk about our police brutality task force, you see here the picture of Clarence Williams, retired police chief Clarence Williams. Why do we feel it necessary to include a former police chief? Because the solution to this has to be from within and from without. Solutions, and we wanted to have the best. When we have the best amongst the National Bar Association members, we must advance them and push them forward. Darrell Parks, also an expert who has testified. Next slide, please. So election suppression. These 3 pandemics are all lumped together because COVID binds the 3. We're operating with police brutality within a COVID world. We're operating in the worst examples of election suppression in a COVID world, and that impacts every single thing that we do. This map of shame that we talked about, let me just say a word about Barbara Arnwine, who you're going to hear from, and she's going to outline what we are doing, give you more details on what we're doing and how you can help. We have to be concrete, ladies and gentlemen of the NBA. We're not doing white papers anymore. We've got to be concrete in our communities. So Barbara Arnwine created this map of shame, voter suppression. Now it's even worse than it was. You think you have the right to vote, but you're being suppressed every day. And our mandate is to protect that right to vote. I know, I feel like you all may feel like, CK, you keep on saying this, but we must act. We must do this. We have less than 70 days before the presidential election. The right to vote, I'm not talking about who you vote for. That's not appropriate. I'm talking about the right to vote is in jeopardy. And we're going to talk about how it's in jeopardy, because then that will beg the question, what do we do? And at the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you 10 takeaways, 10 things that I would ask, ladies and gentlemen, that you take back to your communities, take back to the affiliate chapters, roll out to our sections, roll out to our divisions, to other Black lawyers, to other poll watchers, to our communities, to the religious community, 10 pointers that every single person who is interested in voting not should do, not could do, not think about doing, but must do. Next slide, please. We're making a difference locally, statewide, and nationally. Barbara Arnwine laid out for us with Tanya Clayhouse and the team what we need to do every week, almost every day between now and election day. What we need to be doing as NBA and how we are corralling our troops of talented lawyers, young lawyers, mid-level lawyers, and seasoned lawyers to be a part of the process. Next slide, please. Barbara Arnwine. She's the mother of the election protection movement, our Barbara Arnwine. And so it's only fitting that when we talk about election protection and how to fight election suppression, that you hear from the best. There are many of us in our localities that have already begun election protection training. I just want to give you heads up about something that sometimes people don't realize. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they will have poll watchers. They will have lawyers who are poll watchers. They are partisan poll watchers that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party will disperse. The Republican Party said they're going to have 50,000. The Democrats will have large numbers dispersed throughout the country at the polls on election day. Election protection is a nonpartisan effort designed to protect the right to vote. We at the NBA are partners with the election protection teams throughout this country. And what we are doing now is adding our lawyers to the existing election protection framework originally conceived by Barbara Arnwine. And that is promulgated today, of course, by the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights, the NAACP, the National Bar Association, the ACLU, the AAJ, and many, many, many other organizations, including our affiliate chapters. On the affiliate chapter level, there's election training, voting rights training, election protection training going on as we speak every single week. The National Bar Association, what we're doing now is coordinating that so that we can have maximum numbers of lawyers doing different things. Some people will be at the polls. We're in the middle of COVID. So you must go at your comfort level. There's much you can do that is separate and apart from being at the polls. So against that backdrop, I will turn over the program to our moderator, who's going to direct the rest of the program. And the question is, what can you do, members of the National Bar? What will you do? What should you do?
Thank you, Madam President, for framing the issue and kind of giving an overview of everything that we're going to discuss today. And now I think, now, like you said, it's time for us to kind of do a little deeper dive. And, kind of the way I see it playing out is we'll talk about, the COVID specifically and how that's affecting the election. And then we'll go into election suppression, election protection, and then we'll round it back off with police brutality again. So the first question I have, and it really will be directed toward Ms. Evans. So to kind of frame the issue from your perspective as the co-chair of the COVID task force, how do you see COVID impacting both voter registration and turnout in election day 2020?
Thank you, Josh. Obviously, it's going to have a big impact. And I think the most important thing that we all need to know is that this year, more than ever, and as usual, Black voters will matter. And we know that we can turn this election. And in terms of looking at COVID, one of our most critical and immediate threats to our vote is COVID. Black communities are overwhelmingly more vulnerable than white communities. In states and counties where Black people are the majority, death rates are 3.5 times higher than the national average for COVID. Our voting locations must offer safe, socially distanced voting. And if we don't address that now, then many Black people will be forced to put their health at risk to cast the ballot. So what can we do about that? First of all, our task force would like to partner with all of our affiliates and regional chapters to do this simple thing. We know that we can practice socially distancing, but what we need when we're out are masks and sanitizers. And what we're hoping to do is to get a collection of our membership to support us in purchasing masks and sanitizers that will be branded NBA on one cheek and a sponsor brand on the other cheek, so that we can distribute them when, not just on the day of November 3rd, but beforehand, when early voting can take place. Why? Because that is safe for us and we don't have to put our lives at risk to vote. So that's the first thing that you can do. The next significant threat to us is the abuse of political power to make voting more difficult. We saw this in Georgia earlier this summer, and it is a real risk for Black voters in the fall. We are seeing it right now with the issues with the United States Postal Services. What can we do? What can we do? Again, we're going to call on our affiliates and our regions to do the following. We're going to ask you to volunteer to go to polling places in your location where there have been problems in the past, and to provide safety, again, so that you don't have to put your health at risk. We're going to ask you to get in your car, put a sign on your car that says this is where you can come to and help. All of these will be details we will roll out as the task force moves forward with our work. And the third form of voter suppression is outright lying and misinformation to Black voters. What can we do about that? Again, we're going to reach out to our affiliates and our regions to ask you to help distribute palm cards, little cards that provide information that you can have right in your wallet, that provide information about where do you go if you have problems with your vote. Not sometime in the future, but on that date. The most important thing that we can do is to make sure that we cast our votes. So how do you do those things? You contact me, you contact Marlon Primes, or you contact Laverne. We are the members of the task force, and we will have this information. And in fact, what we're going to ask you to do is to contact us within the next week. Because as our president said, we don't have time to waste. And if we're going to do these things, we've got to do them right now, because we want to get out in front of the electorate during the early voting period. Early voting is safer voting for us.
So another question, kind of following up on that, for individuals with that may have, an autoimmune deficiency, or may have, may live with an elderly individual, is there anything that can be done inside of the home? And that's for all panelists. And if you'd like to answer, please take it.
Well, you mean what can be done to make their home safer?
No. What can, in terms of voting, what can be done inside of the home in terms of registration, or in terms of helping to get people out to vote, or explaining the voting process to individuals? What can be done inside of the home to support this effort?
Looks like, all right. Well, I mean, obviously, you don't have to leave your home to vote. You can do mail-in ballots. And I would say, don't mail it. Find somebody to then take it to the supervisor of elections, where you can drop it off so you make sure that your vote is actually counted, because we've seen the nonsense with the United States Postal Service. And this, again, is going to go with partnerships. You're going to need people to help you. Make sure that you can vote safely. I'm interested in what the other panelists would say in response to your question about what can be done in the home to support voting and registration.
I'm going to defer to Barbara Arnwine, but we do have a number of, at the end, we're going to go through some of the options, voting options that people do have. But if you are unable to go out and vote because you have some type of a medical condition, the question is going to be, can you vote by mail, and can you do it reliably? That's going to be the issue. Are you in a jurisdiction, or does your jurisdiction allow you to have your ballot dropped off? Because it's not a given. Is that reliable, or are you only left with the option of voting by mail? And in some states, that form is so onerous that it would take really a law degree to figure out how you answer all those questions. Right. So the issue is going to be, for those people who are what we call the sick and shut in church, how are they going to vote safely? Because they may not have the ability to go out. And their options, depending upon the jurisdiction, will be absentee ballot, voting by mail, and ensuring. And so one of the things that we want to do in communities is having groups, and there are groups that are working on this now, that will help to educate the sick and shut in on how to fill out that form. Because you can't, it's just like when you're taking a bar review, when you're taking a bar exam. If you have 20 questions, you're going to be graded. I mean, you need to fill out all the questions. You can't be graded on the questions, as far as I remember, that you don't fill out. So that, and sometimes your ballot, if you don't fill it out properly, will not be counted. And when you have people who are sitting there in judgment looking at these ballots subjectively, that's another form of voter suppression. But Barbara, I think Barbara Arnwine is also going to address that.
Yes, thank you so much. It's great to hear, everyone, and just thank you for having me on this panel and for all the trust you give us every day, Madam President. And thanks, everybody. Couple of things just think about. One of the biggest obstacles that's going to present itself this year, it's going to be brand new for us, is that we know our most reliable voter base has been our senior citizens. The African Americans over 65 have been amazing voters throughout history, and especially in the last decades. Yet, a number of them are totally isolated. They don't have internet access. They don't have regular interactions with people in order to stay safe, in order to stay alive and healthy, because they have comorbidities or whatever that makes it important for them to guard their health. So one of the things that we got to come up with is some creative ways of reaching out to our elderly in particular. And part of that is going to require us to create videos. One thing we know right now is that people, for every one person that might read, 80 will watch a video almost. I mean, and it's that kind of disparity. It's massive between people who love to watch videos and people who will read something. So we want to create a couple of smart things. We want to create videos. If you've seen the one that was done for North Carolina, the 10 ways to vote in North Carolina, it's gorgeous. One of the best, layperson videos I've ever seen done. And it's really smart. And we need videos like that for every single state. We need videos on, vote by mail. We also need animations, almost in the form of taking the videos and reducing them not to a written pamphlet, but reducing them to images and graphics that people can, almost not like a cartoon, but you know what I'm saying, an animation almost that people can follow. And that also works. We've noted those are extremely popular. And so we need to be thinking about ways to educate our elderly. I am teaming up with a member of my church, and my pastor has given us 2 lawyers, Thea Wilson and myself. He's given us the entire prayer service in September, one of our prayer services, to do nothing but teach our church of 10, 12,000 people how to vote in this era. We all could do that. We all should be talking to our different religious leaders, because I know that we have people who are Islamic, people who are, Hindu, all kinds of religious, and Buddhists and others. We need to be reaching out to say to our faith leaders that we need space in which to conduct education, because people are watching online. They are watching these services. They make their young folks come in and put them on or whatever. So we're going to commandeer at his request. My pastor made this request. He called me and said, will you do this for my church, for our church? And so we're grateful to do it. And we're going to, spend a whole Bible study session doing nothing but teaching. So there's creative ways to do this. I love the palm cards. I mean, there's a lot of ways we can do it. But the one thing that's clear, folks, is that we have to do it, because the states are horrible. They're horrible. They're driving me crazy. I go to some of these websites and all I can do is do like this. They're terrible. And I feel bad for voters. And they don't send out mail. That's why we've seen, such a drop-off. Remember, we have seen huge drop-offs in Black voter participation, especially vote by mail during the primaries. So we need to really be stepping it up about how we do this outreach. So I just wanted to add those couple of things in.
Yeah, I think that kind of dovetails right into the next couple of questions that I had for you. So I watched it, or I listened to a podcast that you were featured on. It's Who, What, Why. I think it aired early July, and you were talking about ballots spoilage. Can you? And I think that these videos that you just referenced would address those spoilage. So can you kind of explain, because for me, I had not heard of that term before. So can you kind of explain what spoilage is, and kind of how videos would address spoilage, or how it would assist with voting spoilage?
Well, I mean, it's significant. Think about this, everyone. In 2016, there were an estimated 2 million spoiled ballots in the United States, and an election that was decided by 80,000 people, 80,000 votes, right? So think about it. Those 2 million people whose ballots were spoiled went to the polls, or they otherwise voted. They cast a vote. They were eligible voters. What happened? Why weren't their ballots counted? What the spoilage means. Here's what knocked their ballots out. If they voted by mail, and vote by mail, by the way, has a huge rejection rate. And why is that? Because we've seen it in the battles that we've had, the litigation battles we've had to rage in Georgia, Florida, and other states. One, signature mismatch. That if it's not the exact signature match, you have untrained people. They're not specialists in handwriting, who sit up there and try to tell it whether or not somebody's signature matches their original signature card. Some of us get cute in our writing, but we forget that for the purposes of signing that ballot, it's got to be readable, everybody. It's got to be legible, and it's got to look like your original signature. So that knocks out a whole lot of people. The other thing is, believe it or not, if you mail the ballot if you mail the ballot and it doesn't get there in the right time, some states require that any mail ballot be received 2 days before the election. 3 days before the election, or by election day, even if the mail is slow and it's not your fault. They still require that your ballot be received. That's why you've seen the litigation going on right now in Pennsylvania, because they're saying we know the mail's going to be slow, so you got to build in, and you're going to send out the ballots late. You've already conceded that. You got to build in some time, extra time for those ballots to be returned. So believe it or not, that knocks out a whole lot of ballots. Where else do you lose ballots? You'll never believe this one: postage. Wrong postage. People look at these ballots and they make a couple of assumptions. One is that it's governmental, so it must be free mail. And they see that little spot that's there for the postage stamp, and they think, okay, that's it. And so they mail it back without postage, and they don't count. They also, if you put on the wrong postage, if it requires 2 stamps and you put on 1 stamp, I mean, all these issues that result in mail ballots not being received, appropriately by the other thing is, guess what? Failing to sign. If any of you have ever done a mail ballot, what do you have to do? You got to sign it. I talked about the signature, but you got to sign it to begin with. And some people forget to sign. And some ballots, in some states like Texas, right? They have a security envelope, which means you got to sign, you got to put your ballot in that security envelope. You got to put it in the regular envelope to return in, and you got to sign that security envelope where it's required for ballot submission. You got to sign there, and you got to sign on the flap of the regular envelope. That results in people getting confused. Guess what else they've been rejecting ballots for? I've heard this one for the first time today, and I said, of course, why didn't I ever think about that? Is that if you're a husband and a wife, or your family members sitting in the same home, and you say, okay, I'm gonna make sure everybody's ballots get mailed, you put them all in the same envelope. Guess what? That's not that's not legal. So that's not counted. So those ballots get thrown out. Who would have thought about that one? In Maryland, they say you must fill your ballot out in black ink. Black ink. Guess what happens if you don't? So all of these are areas where ballots can be spoiled. The other thing is, if you're voting in person, there are states that have what are called out of precinct no vote laws. Means that if you're not in the correct precinct when you vote, they will not count your ballot. They'll give you a I voted sticker. They will give you a provisional ballot, and you'll be just as proud thinking you voted. And you don't realize that in those states, those ballots are disposed of as spoiled. So there's a lot of ways. Failure to bring ID, all these things. Failure to go back and correct whatever deficit they told you was a result of your having to vote provisionally. But just think about it: 2 million spoiled ballots.
Yeah, and another thing, that I think I remember you saying on this interview is you said even individuals who are registered to vote, if they do not vote in, for a certain number of years for whatever reason, then they aren't mailed their mail-in ballot. So they may not, get the opportunity to, they may be waiting on their ballot to come. And then even before all of that, even before they can get the ballot wrong, they won't even get the ballot because they haven't voted in a couple.
Thank you. You're raising a critical issue, folks. 8.7% of the voter registration list is inactive. That means that this is a person, that's 18 million people, by the way, who are inactive, meaning they're sitting on an inactive list. In Georgia and in some other states, if you're on your inactive list, they will not mail you a ballot. Don't get confused. They're not going to mail you a ballot because they don't consider you a fully registered member of the electorate. So you're going to have to cure whatever the reason is that you're on the inactive list. That means that they probably mailed you one of those stupid postcards that even the Supreme Court recognized that 80% of people don't return. Put at 60 to 80% of people put it in the trash because it looks like spam. And they think it's spam. They don't understand that they could lose their voting rights eventually if they don't turn it back, because the state assumes if it's not returned that they have moved and that they're no longer in that address. We know from research that that's 60% of all people who don't return those ballots actually are in the right address. They just don't return them because they think it's trash and spam. So the other thing that we got to be very clear about is that then if they don't vote for 2 successive elections, what happens? They become purged. So you got the inactive list to begin with that you sit on until, because when you're on an inactive list, you are set up to be purged. When you're purged, you don't get a letter. You get nothing that says, we're sorry, you no longer are on the voter registration list. So in Georgia, when you saw some of those long lines, some of the people in those long lines, when people say, what do you mean I'm purged? What do you mean I'm not on the list? What do you mean I got to prove my, in order to be considered an active voter, I got to prove my address. I didn't, these are the things that happen. And so I just wanted to say that. Thank you for bringing that up.
No worries.
Now, by the way, there are 18 million, in addition to the 18 million on the inactive list, there are 18 million purged voters out there in the last 3 years.
Josh,
I'm sorry.
may I ask one question?
Sure.
Is there some central place that lawyers could go to find out about what are the voting rules in your state?
Yes, one thing that we're going to be doing through election protection is that we're going to be producing, the FAQs, the 10 things voters need to know. We're going to be working on those things, but what I do, frankly, because I just did it, because I'm working on some issues in Virginia right now, is, I go to the Board of Elections websites and I just read them. And also I go to NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislators. Their website is awesome. It's one of the best out there, no doubt about it. And they must pay somebody to update it every day. It's amazing how fast they update that website. So Virginia passed, changed all their laws. The next day it was updated.
Could you repeat that website again, Barbara?
Yeah. It's nccsl.org. It is the National Conference of State Legislators. That is their website. It is awesome. It is the best because they have all the information there. There are other websites that are okay, but some websites just aren't kept up to date like they keep theirs up to date. That's what I like about it.
And then I just want to add, at the NBA, remember we have our Wiley-Branton symposium in October. And at that symposium, that's the month, actually it'll be 2 weeks, about 2 weeks before the election. And what we are doing is we're going to have training for 20 states simultaneously. 20 states. So the election laws and what we need to know for 20 states for our membership, that will be, so if you missed your training in your locality, and if you're in, and we will roll out to our members those 20 states. And these are 20 of the states that we've targeted as being those that are the most egregious in terms of election suppression. So the training at our conference, Wiley-Branton, is going to be focused on that. And I just want to highlight that if we didn't have this virtual world because of COVID, we would have had Wiley-Branton in Detroit, Michigan. We chose Michigan for a reason because we wanted to be in a battleground state. We chose Michigan for another reason because we have such robust National Bar Association participation in Detroit. We have 3 past presidents. Harold Pope, who's very involved. We have Reggie Turner, who's very involved, and Dennis Archer, very involved. We also have Judge Denise Langford Moore, who is very involved as well. Kayla Crane is also very, very involved, and a team of exceptional NBA members who are working to put this together. So in the event that you missed all the dialogue, you're trying to remember, but you can't, remember that 2 weeks before the elections, the NBA is going to be your best resource for training. I just want to throw that out there.
And Madam President, let's point out to everyone that we finished that training on the 17th. On the 19th, several states go to the polls for early voting. Huge states where you have major African-American populations start their early voting on the 19th. of October. So this could not be more critical to have people really get that training at that point.
So kind of going back to voting safely, because I can imagine that, we have all of this information. We have, kind of our marching orders now. I can imagine that the first question that I'm going to get from the people that I'm encouraging to go exercise their right to vote is, how can I do it safely? Because COVID is killing people. So, I'm going to want to have a response for that, especially when, I've read things about the electronic ballots and how they, you need a certain certification to clean them or something like that. And it can mess up the calibrations, and you have to shut them down to clean them. And, and to the extent that nothing, there's no plan in place, or, that I can't articulate a plan in place, we may lose individuals that are seeking to vote, but don't know that they can do it safely. So to any panelist, can you speak specifically to the DC area, or Region 12, in terms of what DC has done to make it safe to go out and exercise our right to vote?
So I'm going to defer to the DC people, and then I'll talk about Georgia, but why don't I defer to the DC people to address that, the DC area people to address that.
Well, I'm going to defer to Barbara, our expert.
You've been very kind, Karen. I was gonna on the in-poll voting, in-person voting. I don't know if people saw it, but there was a poll that came out last Monday, and they asked likely voters. These are people who regularly vote, what they call reliable voters. How are they going to vote this year in 2020? Get ready for this. 52% said they're going to vote in person. 52% said they're going to the polls. Oh, if we have 180 million people as they're projecting who will vote this election, that's over 90 million people going to the polls. So, in-person voting is key. We have, we constructed, as part of my organization, TJC, Transformative Justice Coalition, an entire committee on nothing but in-person voting. Because one, people have the right to vote any voter option they have. There are 4 voter options. Vote by mail, absentee voting is one. And we say for those, no excuses, no obstacles. It's the key to those. Second is in-person voting. And people have the right to go to the polls. They have a right to have, a selection of different kinds of balloting. They have a right to, if they're a person with disability, to have accommodations, all of those things. And we got to stop the voter abuse at the polls. Because I think, when you make people stand in line for 6 hours, that's voter abuse. I'm sorry. The third thing you need is early voting. Guess what? African Americans, we know this. I mean, this is not hypothetical, it's not speculative. If you give African American voters the opportunity to vote early, 50% of all African Americans voting in that state will vote early. And in some states like North Carolina, 70% of them will vote early. Early voting is absolutely essential to us. And for Latinos, it's only like 10% below our use. Or 10 to 15% below our use. So it's very important to people of color to have early voting. And the fourth option is one that I'm so upset the states aren't doing more of, and that's drive-up voting. Believe it or not, every state has the capacity to do curbside voting, drive-up voting. They have the capacity for people to drive up and drop, not only use drop boxes, which sadly the RNC is litigating like crazy against in Ohio. They litigated against in Alabama. They're trying to kill that option, which is so vital to so many people. And the other thing that people don't realize is that in some states and in some localities and counties, you also can drop your ballot off to an actual worker, or they can come out to your car and do a form of curbside voting where they collect your ballot and certify it, all those kind of things. But what we don't do that. We force people into standing into line when we could have, 10, 20 lines in these huge stadiums. We're talking people get, standing in line for the stadiums. Heck, they can drive up to the stadiums, be in their cars, be safe, be air conditioned, not be standing out, and just drive through and vote. Why are we doing that? I mean, it's crazy that these states are refusing to do it, because Virginia has curbside voting, Texas has curbside voting, North Carolina has curbside voting, Kentucky has the capacity to do curbside voting, because they were showing the curbside voting machines at the arena. Why weren't they out there doing that? I mean, so these are kind of like the local advocacy stuff we should be doing. So I just want to, really get into the fact that, one, people have the right to vote in person. I don't want to hear anybody denigrating folks for voting in person. They have that right. And if that's what they need to do to feel that their vote is going to be counted, then we got to be there for them and say, we support you, because what we're about is you voting. Because the alternative is what we don't want, is that you don't vote. We want you to vote. We don't care if it's vote by mail. We don't care if it's vote in person. We don't care if it's curbside. We don't care if you early vote, as long as you vote, and that you make sure that you do it, and that you know what you're doing, and that you do it right, so that you don't get those failure rates. By the way, during the primaries, what was the rejection rate for vote by mail? 10% almost.
If I could just add to what Barbara's saying. All right, Georgia, gloves.
There you go.
Visor, a visor. But you can't have a visor without a mask. So you have to have the mask and the visor. You gonna look crazy. Let's just be clear. You're going to look crazy. I looked crazy, but you have to have the visor, and you have to have this.
Yes.
This is what, these things are very inexpensive. These are the surgical gloves, because you're touching the machines. You should have water, and you should have hand sanitizer.
Now, see, we got to get you on a video.
Right, and I know, and I'm just saying that because in Georgia, I waited in line for almost 5 hours.
Yes.
These are the things, and I was praying the whole time, because this is in the middle of COVID. And of course, you got to do social distancing. These are the types of things, when we talk about our NBA members, how can I help? These types of masks that would have, like this one has my firm emblem on it, but it would have NBA and whoever the sponsor is. That's how, I'm going back to what Karen Evans said.
Yes.
NBA, and so the people know the NBA is there and present and helping. There's so many ways that we can help. These things cost, I don't know, 49.5 cents. These are cheap. But this little plastic shield is so important, but you can't just, some people just think, oh, I got a plastic shield, that's good. No, you have to wear the mask. So, and it's not the time to be thinking about being body beautiful, because we just really have to be safe. And the hand sanitizer, we can have hand sanitizer that has the NBA logo on it.
True.
These are concrete things. Just by the way, so that you all know this, we are raising money. We are raising money and getting not sponsorship, but partnerships with the National Bar Association to help us with this election protection effort. This is part of our protecting people's right to vote. Because if you got to go out there, if you have to do it, if you make the decision that you want to go in person, we want the NBA there helping our communities, because that is at its core what the NBA is about. We're a social justice organization. The right to vote, protecting the right to vote, is something the NBA has always done. We just have to elevate the efforts, because the times call for that. So I didn't want to, and these plastic gloves, you can get a box of them. Now they're running really cheaply, but we want the NBA through our partners to help provide these, inundate the communities that we know. And in Atlanta, when we were facing all this election suppression, Good Samaritans went, got food, got water, got supplies, got hand sanitizer for the voters. And we have partnered with many of these organizations, the NBA. So we're part of that collaborative effort. In Kentucky, when there are problems in Kentucky, when they close, 97% of the polling stations, I called Lanita Baker, our vice president. She and that affiliate chapter there were instrumental in helping people coordinate transportation. It's our understanding that Lyft and Uber were offering free transportation to people. The national bar lawyers were in the mix, coordinating that, helping, transporting. Some people, you can do that from your home. You don't have to go outside. You have to vote and be engaged at your comfort level. We're not telling you go out in the streets if that's not your comfort level. But for some people, it is their comfort level. For some people, they do want to be poll watchers inside the poll, and we will make sure that they're trained so that they learn how to do it the right way.
All right. I think I want to take this time to ask Taisha if there's any questions that she would like to pose to the panel from the audience. We're kind of.
See, there's a lot of chat. There's a lot of information in the chat.
Yeah,
There is a lot of chat. Good evening, everyone. There are a few questions from the chat as well as from the attendees. The first one, I believe, would be best for Ms. Arnwine. It asks, how can you find out if your ballot was rejected, or how can you confirm that your ballot was received?
Yes, some of the states have tracking systems, believe it or not. I would say most states that use vote by mail have tracking systems, and you can track your ballot. And that's important. I mean, when they talk about Colorado, Washington, Oregon, the states that routinely use vote by mail, all of them have sophisticated tracking systems, because that's important for you to know that your ballot got to where it needs to get. So here's what we're saying to people. Please listen, this is so key. We're saying to everybody, by September the 22nd, which is National Voter Registration Day, everyone who wants a mail-in ballot should have requested it by that date, because you gotta leave time for that ballot to get to you. So you gotta have put in your request by the 22nd. Then we're saying that by October the 14th, no later, your mail-in ballot, absentee ballot should be in the mail, should already be in the mail on its way, because we have to be realistic. I don't know if you saw it, even since DeJoy was grilled by the House, last Monday, there was a picture yesterday in the online where they took and destroyed a brand new sorting machine and put it in the trash. Brand new sorting machine that sorts over 50,000 pieces of mail an hour. So they are still destroying the infrastructure of the USPS. So we have to really count on slow, even though he's lying to Congress and saying that he's going to give it priority treatment, etc. Please, people, let's be smart. Let's do a couple things. In the states where they allow you to bundle ballots, do them. Because there are states that allow that. In fact, they encourage it in some states. They say, please pick them up from the nursing homes. Please pick up the ballots. You got to know your state law to do that, because in other states it's illegal. In the states where you can vote early. But also if you vote by mail, get a ride to the polls, go to your drop boxes and drop them in. One thing we should be yelling about is drop boxes. We should be demanding them everywhere in our communities, so that people can just go down the block and drop the darn ballot and not have to worry about mailing it. So we have to really push these strategies to get the mail in and to take care of this, because this is a real crisis. It's not a phony crisis. It's not something that's going to resolve itself overnight.
Thank you. Another question is submitted. Ask, how much money are we talking about in regards to purchasing masks and sanitizers, and where can the members send any such monetary donations for support for those purchasing efforts?
Well, let me address that question. How much money? Well, if we think about masks, and this is not based on any empirical study, but if we were to do masks for, let's just say 100 people, probably masks, gloves, and hand sanitizers for 100 people, if we just took that, will probably be around between $50 to $75. 100 people for masks, and when I say mask, I'm talking about the mask and that little plastic thing. Hand sanitizer, just a little one, and the mask, and then the gloves. So the question is, where should we donate the money? We're going to have a dedicated, separate, I don't want to say, it's called portal, just for election protection related equipment for our community. So if you wanted to, as an NBA member, say, look, I don't have the ability to go into my community and do this, but I'd like to do it through the NBA. We're going to have a dedicated way of doing that donation on our website. So you want to know when? We're giving 1 week, just 1 week, to do that dedicated donation button strictly for protective gear for the elections.
Yes.
And what we want to do is, I would like to challenge members of the NBA, say, we've raised $1,000. We need to raise $100,000.
Yes.
Because remember, we have 20 states that we've identified as the most critical states where we see election suppression. We have it down to the communities within those states, the cities where it's most prevalent, where it impacts our community. That's where we would want to use our resources. And remember, we have affiliate chapters. When we identify these places, we're looking at, where do we have affiliate chapters? Where do we have a strong NBA presence where we can disseminate and help our communities? So part of this is a coordinated effort. And Barbara, I don't know if you were going to speak about it, but we are going to have, and I've said this before, a fellow, fully funded position. It's already paid for, thanks to Tanya Clayhouse. A fully funded, fully paid for position. It's an NBA Transformative Justice Coalition fellow who will be supervised and monitored by Barbara Arnwine and Tony Towns. Tony Towns from this very region. So, and they will have an office, that person will have an office in the NBA office. The coordination that we're talking about, the donations that we're talking about, the build up and support and call to action from our members will be coordinated through that person. So we will be able to see how much money we've raised. Again, these are calls to action because we know that the NBA members can do it better than anyone when it comes to our community. We can do it virtually. When Barbara Arnwine talked about speaking to the churches,
yeah, that's
churches ain't congregating in person. So we're doing virtual training in some instances. In other instances, people are congregating in a socially distant, prudent way. But a lot of that is virtual. So if you are not able, if you're not ambulatory, but you are one of our incredible bar members and you want to do something, that's the kind of coordination that we could have in your locality. If you needed statistics on what part of your state needs the most help that you can help, we can get you that because we have a fellow whose sole job will be to do that. We have the resources because we have the partners in this election protection space, in the voting rights space, who have that data, who are working collaboratively with us.
And can I just follow through? Because I want to pitch everybody. We are in the process of trying to select that fellow. I want to encourage anybody who wants to apply. If you have 3 to 4 years of experience, that's the level that we're looking for, to please apply to be the NBA Election Protection Fellow. Don't worry, it's a 1-year job, but we are already working on the additional money for future retention, because we are into this for what we call infrastructural, the institutional development around election protection for the national bar. So we're not about, every year having to rebuild the plane even though we have to keep, tinkering with it to make it better. But we want you, so if you know somebody who might be interested, who's looking for a job out there, or want to do something meaningful for, to come in and be part of us for a couple of years or more, they can apply at B Arnwine. That's my first initial for Barbara, B, then my last name, A, Aura, N as in Nancy, W-I-N-E, Barnwine, as they say, at tjcoalition.org. I'm going to put it in the chat. If I can figure out how to do that, but I'm gonna put it into
and you know what, we can send a link. We'll send a link, yeah. And Maurice, if you call the NBA office, Maurice Foster will have that information. Absolutely. As well. Yeah. And just so you know, Barbara Arnwine, who's the expert globally, not just in the United States, in the world, her office is right next to our office at the NBA. So this fellow is critical to the coordination of our extraordinary efforts. We're taking whatever the NBA has ever done in election protection, we're taking it to another level that's not been seen in this country before. So coordination is critical.
It's gonna be a great job. You get to work with us. CK, you get to work with me. You get to work with Daryl Jones. You get to work with Tony Towns. You get to work with all the brilliant leaders of the NBA nationwide. You want to do this. You want to, I want people beating down the doors to do this job. I want to be able to go to, like CK, we want to go to some corporations and say, we need 10 people, right? I mean, we want to, roll this thing. So people, please apply.
And I want to mention the co-chairs of the election protection effort this year, because they've done an incredible job as well, working with Barbara Arnwine, Tanya Clayhouse, our whole team. Our President-elect Carlos Moore, who also worked with me last year on election protection, Carlos Moore and Leslie Fields. Leslie Fields is from Region 12. I want to say that because it's important for you all to know the level of proficiency, excellence, expertise, and countless hours that Leslie, our President-elect Carlos Moore, have put into this effort and working with Barbara, with Tanya, and an entire committee. We are serious because we are not going to be, we are taking the position, we will not be denied the right to vote. You deny one of us the right to vote, you deny all of us the right to vote. So just wanted to mention that. I didn't want to, Joshua, you might have some other questions before we wrap up. I know it's getting a little bit late. Or Taisha, I think there's some other questions from the audience.
There is a couple of other questions, and one other that I would know is whether or not there's a website that lists the biggest or most common mistakes made with mail-in ballots that any individuals can
we should make that.
Why don't we work on Carlos? Yeah. Carlos is on this call as well. Carlos, why don't we task our committee? That's an excellent suggestion.
Love it.
With doing that. Carlos? Our president, anyway, he might have us on mute, but we're going to take that suggestion. Thank you so much.
Good idea.
Someone had asked, where can you confirm your voter registration? And I know that there is a link for it, like USA.gov. Is that a reliable place to go to check to see if you're
Barbara, we advocate vote.org, right, Barbara?
Right. And also, we advocate for vote.org to do what we call voter vigilance, voter verification, to make sure you're not on that purge list, because you think, a whole lot of people are sitting on it and think they are really well registered. And they're silly. I have a friend, I tell you, I'm not lying. I had a friend who voted in the California primary. What was that? March 2nd, whatever it was. And she voted, and she went to check her voter registration just on GP because somebody said she ought to do it. And guess what? She was gone. There was no record of her ever being a voter in California, ever. And she's been voting for years. And she had to re-register and had to, really fight for them to reconstruct her record. This is important. I mean, we don't know why these things are happening. We don't know if that's an administrative glitch, whatever, but you got to check your registration. The other good place to go is, of course, the Board of Elections. I mean, I spend a lot of time in these Board of Election sites because I'm getting to know them, because that's where some of your best information is going to be. And then, of course, if it's wrong, then we got to, correct that. What I want to say, and I hope every NBA chapter will do, every NBA affiliate will do, everybody will do, is you got to know these Board of Elections. This is the time to be talking to them. This is the time to be building those relationships. This is the time to establish that we want to know, what are you providing to the voters? If you're not going to provide masks, gloves, sanitizers, etc., then we know we got to go to the businesses, we know the churches and others to do that. We just got to know. We got to find out what they're planning to do. We also need to, make sure that that we're talking to them about, have you ever thought about the fact that in our state, because it's true that in many states, there is no rule prohibiting drop boxes. There may not be an enabling statute, but usually there's no prohibition statute. So you can do it. But you need to talk to your local county board of supervisors. Guess what they're doing in Pennsylvania that I love? I mean, talk about creative. They looked at the drop off in the Black participation rate in Philadelphia. They went to the Board of Elections and said, guess what? We don't have early voting in Pennsylvania. Can you believe that? They don't have early voting at all, with all those Black votes. But anyway, so what they did was they convinced the Board of Elections to actually create satellites. They have now gone from basically 2 offices and created 16 to 20 throughout the city and placed them in Black and brown neighborhoods. So this is what, and what does that mean? That means that for every voter in Pennsylvania in those counties, several counties have done this, by the way, it's not just Philadelphia. And what they're doing is that people can go and request their mail-in ballot early, because you can as soon as it's available, and they're voting in person. They're just voting it right there at the spot and turning that bad boy in. And that is another strategy. There's all these things we can do, but we gotta ask for it. We gotta fight for it. We gotta, Pennsylvania said they couldn't do drop boxes. And I kept telling them for months, yes, you can, you need to, you desperately need to. And when they saw the bad turn-in rate vote by mail from African Americans, they put drop boxes in 2 weeks. 2 weeks all over the state. There's a lot that could be done if we insist.
And thank you for that. Taisha, did you have any additional ones that are, I know we're running kind of short on time. We have.
Okay.
No further questions at this time.
Okay.
All right.
Somebody wanted to know how to get the North Carolina video. Please, you can write me. I'm gonna send it. What would you like to do, Maurice? We can send
Maurice,
it.
why don't we get it to Maurice, and then Maurice can get it out.
Maurice,
And
yeah.
why don't we will we be able to post it? I think we can post it.
Yes, that's a
Because I
good
think
idea. Because it's instructional. I would love for more people in other states to follow it.
absolutely. As time is closing in on us, I know I wanted to just underscore that our young lawyers, we have so many magnificent young lawyers who are just engaged in the process, engaged in the NBA. The leadership, a lot of the leadership of the NBA is from YLD. And we are just so tickled by that. We need to talk about that because they are our future. And for those of us who say we young, but we know the real deal. If you've been practicing for over 30 years, you can't claim you're YLD, but in spirit we feel that we are passing on the baton to incredibly talented, magnificent young people who have a lot of energy. In our election protection space, the young lawyers are making their mark, ladies and gentlemen, and we have our chair of YLD, Anika Williams, who's just going to address you all very quickly. We're doing incredible things in Florida. We know that all crazy things in elections happen in Florida and Georgia. Why for me? I live and practice in Florida and I live and practice in Georgia, but both of those states is always some little craziness that happens, ballots in the middle of the street, all of these types of things. So against that backdrop, Anika, maybe if you want to say a word just about some of the great efforts that you and your members are doing. I also want to get a shout out, of course, to Nick Austin, who came from the YLD as well.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening to President Hoffler, the NBA officers, including immediate past YLD Chair Nick Austin, Director Turner, and the Region 12 officers and all of the members of Region 12. As mentioned, my name is Onika Williams, and I'm Chair of the Young Lawyers Division. The NBA YLD has made President Hoffler's efforts to combat the 3 pandemics part of our programmatic themes this year. In particular, to support the NBA's election protection, voter registration, and voter education efforts, the YLD, with approval of the Big Bar, has 3 exciting partnerships to announce. First, the NBA and the NBA YLD will be partnering with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, a nonpartisan and nonprofit initiative run by returning citizens. FRRC's fines and fees programs helps returning citizens break down any barriers they may have to voting from financial obligations that arose from a felony conviction, excluding murder or felony sexual offenses. FRRC has raised more than $4 million to pay off fines, but thousands of returning citizens need assistance. We will be working with your help to collect funds to help pay off these outstanding fees and fines associated with the convictions of the returning citizens so that they can also exercise their right to vote. Past President Junius Williams, the founding YLD chair, and YLD member Janine Lofton will be helping lead these efforts. Second, the YLD has been selected as a partner for When We All Vote, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization launched by Michelle Obama in 2018. When We All Vote is on a mission to change the culture around voting, increase participation in every election, and help close the race and age voting gap. As a When We All Vote partner, we will have access to resources and tools to help our communities across the country to register to vote. YLD member Ashley Lee will be leading our When We All Vote efforts. Third, the YLD has been asked to assist with Lawyers and Callers, an Election Protection Coalition national campaign. Lawyers and Callers is a program that does election protection through African American faith-based communities. The National African American Clergy Network, Skinner Leadership Institute, and Sojourners will be operating the Lawyers and Callers Hotline and Command Center for the 2020 election in partnership with the Lawyers Committee. The call center will cover the states of Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. YLD member Camille Glover will be helping lead the Lawyers and Callers call center. Special thanks to Ms. Glover and past YLD chair, now board member at large, Keela Crane, for recommending YLD for this initiative. We will be sending out additional information regarding these 3 programs and ways for you to get involved in the coming days.
Yay.
All right.
Oh, just phenomenal. And just so you know, Anika and all the magnificent YLD and NBA family, we are in the final stages of negotiating with a new partner of the NBA that would enable the YLD and other members of the NBA who want to be involved in the litigation part of election protection to be able to do research free of charge. So, because sometimes that is something that precludes our membership from getting involved. If you don't have free access to LexisNexis and tools, then it's very difficult to be involved in some election protection litigation. So anyway, we'll comment later about that when the deal is done, but I just wanted to let you know that we support you wholeheartedly. We are so proud of you, and thank you. So as we're wrapping up, I just hate to wrap up. I could talk about elections all night, but I know everything has to come to a close. I do have some closing thoughts that, Kyle, if you could just some pointers, some takeaways, and I want us to begin the process of, of sharing all of this information, and we'll put it in a different format through our affiliates, our sections and divisions, so that everybody is operating on the same page. So let's just do some takeaways. The first one, these are real basic. Check your voting status. We heard about this. Go to vote.org. Barbara Arnwine said it, Karen Evans said it, Carlos Moore has said it. I've been saying it, preaching it. Check your voting status.
Yes.
Number 2, verify the various voting options in your jurisdiction. Early in person, Barbara Arnwine talked about that. On election day, some of you just, we just take it to the bridge, last minute election day, that works for us. If that's what you want to do, do it. Just take it to the bridge. But if you're going to take it to the bridge, you're going to have to look, remember, we're going to have to be all the way live with all of that. Just take it to the bridge. Vote by mail, drop off if permissible. Mail it in if you feel comfortable with that. But if so, remember, the MBA is going to be a reservoir of information of how to fill out the stuff in the different jurisdictions. Next slide, please. 3, have a voting plan. Every single day from now until election day, Barbara Arnwine or the chairman of her board, Daryl Jones, on the Santita Jackson show, talk about a voting plan. It's important, and the Santita Jackson show is syndicated throughout the country. I usually do radio shows on voting, on election issues, and on the NBA issues, pushing our brand 4 or 5 days a week. But the importance of having a voting plan. Don't let anyone else determine how you'll vote. You determine what's best for you. If it's not for you to go in person, then figure out and do your plan now. Don't wait till the last minute. We cannot, because we're operating in COVID. There is no last minute anything because of COVID. Next slide, please. Reach out to state election officials to find out the rules. Barbara Arnwine said that. Reach out. She also said you can look at the ncsl.org, Nancy Carlos significantlawyer.org. Spread the word in your communities. That's what speaking truth to power is. That's what we do as lawyers in our community, as NBA lawyers. Spread the word in our community. We can do it virtually. We can do it by going in a church at your comfort level. Next slide, please. Register with the NBA election protection effort. A dedicated space on our webpage for sign up. This is very important. You may feel that you're kind of disconnected. You don't know, there's just too many people, you don't know who to do what. Well, we do know the NBA. So sign up, we will plug you in. Remember, we're going to have a fellow. We have just given you bits and pieces of what we're doing, how exciting it is. Next, please. Protect yourself. Masks, gloves, shields, hand sanitizer, water, food, snacks, umbrella, lawn chairs. We are not trying to be cute in this endeavor. We're trying to be safe. We're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to be comfortable. Lawn chairs, if it's not broken down and you can sit in it, bring your lawn chair.
Please.
And do it do social distance always. Next. Register 5 people. Reach out and touch someone. Register 5 people. I know in Georgia we can register online. I sit with people who are, and I'm focusing on Jack and Jill because my boys are in Jack and Jill. So Jack and Jill has, they're people that are turning 18 now. I want all of them registered. Doesn't matter what organization, what church, what group, mom and them, anyone, register 5 people. Next, please. Arrange transportation for someone who wishes to vote in person, but remember COVID. Yeah. Now, we have a lot of very extraordinarily prominent and successful African-American lawyers in the NBA. You can have a Bentley, you can have a BMW, you can have a Jag, you can have a toy car, you can have some kind of something that just has 4 wheels. Or you can reach out to Uber and Lyft, because as we know in Kentucky, they provided free transportation. One thing we know how to do as lawyers, it's negotiate and talk our way into everything. Arrange for transportation. You don't have to leave your house. Transportation sources. People are volunteering and right now coordinating transportation. Next. Recruit volunteer poll workers. Recruit them. You may not be able to do it, and now they're encouraging young folks. Again, we don't want anyone to be at risk. We don't want you to do something that's outside of your comfort level. But if you know people who want to be poll workers, recruit them. We will train them. We have NBA through our national office and our affiliates. We will train them, either us and our programs, our partners, because we're having a coordinated effort. Next. Refuse to be denied. Refuse to be denied the right to vote. If one person is refused, we're all refused. Call 1-866-R-VOTE, which is a hotline, if you have problems on election day. You're going to get all of this. This is going to be pumped into our social media and emails. Y'all are going to be tired of seeing these 10 points. And they might be refined, but we want to make sure that you have access to the information. I also want to talk about one other initiative, very exciting, that Pat Rozier has initiated this year, she and Mike Rozier. As you know, past presidents, Pat Rozier and Alfreda Robinson started Constitution Day many years ago. And this year, and last year, they touched 36,000 students in Region 12, this very region that's hosting. This year, we want to triple it because we can do it virtually. And they're focusing, as opposed to focusing on middle school students, they're focusing on high school students and those students who can vote, and the focus is on voting rights. Know your rights. This is going to be on the 17th. Maurice, is it the 17th? It's the 17th of this month.
17th.
You have probably seen an email or two already. We're going to pump it. And this is an important program because we need to train the next generation, our children, on how to vote and the things they need to do. And again, past President Pat Rozier is cheerleading this. And I believe that her husband also, past President Mike Rozier, I call them the dynamic duo. They are cheerleading this effort, and we're engaging our children in this effort of Constitution Day. So those are the 10 points. I wanted to talk just very briefly about tomorrow's March on Washington. Incredible that we are living in times where we are seeing another march, and that we're seeing a march during COVID. So this is what I say to you, ladies and gentlemen of the NBA. You do you, and you do what makes you feel comfortable. If you participate in person, make sure that you double up and you march with pride and stand for all of us. If you're in person, have the shield, have the gloves, have the water, and represent all of us. But if you, like me, feel more comfortable participating remotely, virtually, because you feel that you don't have a level of comfort in marching because there are hundreds of thousands of people are in town, then do so with pride. Because the important thing during COVID is to participate, to be counted, to be a part of this magnificent movement, the March on Washington. The NBA is going to be there, ever present. Some people in person, some people remotely, some people by spirit, and some people as sponsors. The NBA is a partner of NAN's March on Washington. So don't tell me the NBA is not everywhere taking its proper place as a leader in civil rights and human rights issues, because we've partnered up, we've teamed up. Our very own, as we know, past President Ben Crump, Chris Stewart, who's a past president of our affiliate chapter, Lanita Baker, and many others will be there with their clients, who are the families of the victims of police brutality. We must support them, whether you do it in person or virtually. We are not shaming anybody for making a decision, just as we won't shame people for making their determination of how they wish to vote. So on that note, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the NBA. I want to thank our NBA family, our partners, our young lawyers, Barbara Arnwine, Karen Evans, Maurice Foster, our officers of the National Bar Association. And I want you all to see Maurice. Raise your hand, because I want you all to see Maurice Foster. He's our interim executive director. He's burning the midnight oil. This is his first week. And he's rocking and rolling, as I say, moving and grooving. Maurice, do you have a word or so to say to the NBA family as we close?
Well, first, I just want to thank you all for the privilege to be able to serve you. You know that I'm very dedicated to the NBA. I grew up in the NBA. I love the NBA. I love each and every one of you. It's just a privilege to be able to work back with you, particularly during these times. These are very important and very critical times, and our people need to see us up front. I'm just proud of the NBA, proud of what we're doing. I ask you also, we need your continued help and support. We want you to connect with us, lend us your connections during this time. We have a lot to do. And if we all pitching together, we will get the job done well, and our people will continue to be proud of us. Thank you, Madam President, for this opportunity to let me speak this evening.
Okay, so now we're going to turn it back over where we started. Thank you, Maurice, to Joshua, our magnificent Region 12 Director. We thank you for all that you do, for stepping up in leadership in that position. We know you're phenomenal. We hear, and you are why the NBA loves our YLD and young lawyers. So thank you, Joshua. So I know you're going to close the program.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, so I'd like to thank, just the panelists, the audience for being so engaged, just everyone who took time out of their schedule today to have this meaningful discussion. It's an important one. I think that my region is adequately prepared to move forward, and we have our marching orders now. So now, there is no excuse for not only, ourselves voting, but registering other individuals to vote as well, and educating other individuals, because as we heard throughout the panel discussion, education about voting causes additional issues with votes being counted and then obviously ultimately the election results. So again, thank you to everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a moderator of these esteemed panelists. It's been a great experience, and I think that's all I have.
Well, I have been corrected on one point that I made. The Constitution Day last year was in Region 4, not Region 12. I apologize, but we're all right there, close together. So I misspoke. But Region 12, Region 4, everybody's close by. I just wanted to correct that for the record. Thank you.
All right.
Well, all right. Well, thank you, NBA family. Until we meet again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.